Hello friends, if you want to watch super hit movie Juno in English, then you must like this video. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel ZemTV Friends in today's video. The movie we're going to talk about is called Juno. I am also going to give you all the information on which platform or on which satellite channel you will get to watch this movie. This video is produced by ZemTV. We will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch it, all the interesting facts about this movie in today's video. I'm going to tell you. Apart from this, we will discuss about the facts of this film's storyline, star-cast actors' performance in the film, and which character has played which role. We will also talk about the story of this film, and I will give you a small review of the story of this film. Also, we will talk in detail about the technical department, music department, pre-production, filming, post-production, budget, box office collection of this film. That's why I request you friends to watch this video till the end, so let's start the video. Juno is a 2007 American coming-of-age comedy drama film directed by Jason Reitman and written by Diablo Cody. Elliot Page stars as the title character, an independent-minded teenager confronting her unplanned pregnancy and the subsequent events that put pressures of adult life onto her. Cera, Jennifer Garner, Jason Bateman, Allison Janney, and J.K. Simmons also star. Filming spanned from early February to March 2007 in Vancouver, British Columbia. It premiered on September 8th at the 2007 Toronto International Film Festival, receiving a standing ovation. Juno won the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay and earned 3 other nominations for Best Picture, Best Director for Reitman, and Best Actress for 20-year-old Page, who was presenting as female at the time and is the 6th youngest nominee in the category. The film's soundtrack, featuring several songs performed by Kimya Dawson in various guises, was the first chart-topping soundtrack since 2006's Dreamgirls and Fox Searchlight's first #1 soundtrack. Juno earned back its initial budget of $6.5 million in 20 days, the first 19 of which were when the film was in limited release. It went on to earn $232.3 million worldwide. Juno received acclaim from critics, many of whom placed the film on their top 10 lists for the year. It has received criticism and praise from members of both the anti-abortion and abortion rights communities regarding its treatment of abortion. Plot: in Elk River, Minnesota, 16-year-old high schooler Juno McGuff discovers she is pregnant after sleeping with her friend and longtime admirer, Polly Bleeker. Originally intending to get an abortion, Juno visits a local women's clinic and encounters a schoolmate outside who is holding a one-person anti-abortion vigil. Once inside, Juno finds herself unable to go through with the procedure and decides to give the baby up for adoption. With the help of her friend Leah, Juno searches the ads in the Penny Saver and finds a childless married couple she feels will provide a suitable home. She informs her father Mac and stepmother Bren of the pregnancy and her plan, and they offer Juno their support. With Mac, Juno meets the couple, Mark and Vanessa Loring, in their expensive St. Cloud home and agrees to a closed adoption. Mark works at home composing commercial jingles, having abandoned his rock band youth, which is now confined to memorabilia displayed in a single room of the house that Vanessa has designated for his personal belongings. Juno learns that she and Mark share tastes in punk rock and horror films and starts visiting him frequently to hang out. One day, Juno and Leah run into Vanessa at the mall, where they watch her interact with children, looking completely content and in her element. Juno encourages Vanessa to talk to the baby in Juno's womb, which kicks for Vanessa. As the pregnancy progresses, Juno struggles with her feelings for Polly, whom she has maintained an outwardly indifferent attitude towards, but jealously confronts after learning he has asked another girl to the upcoming prom. Polly reminds Juno that she requested they remain distant and tells her she broke his heart. Shortly before her due date, Juno visits Mark again. Their interaction becomes emotional, culminating in Mark confiding that he plans on leaving Vanessa to figure his life out. Distraught by this, Juno implores him to change his mind. Mark questions her feelings for him and the intent behind her regular visits, revealing he is starting to develop an attraction to her. When Vanessa arrives home, Mark admits that he does not feel ready to be a father. Juno drives away and breaks down in tears by the side of the road. She then returns to the Loring's home and leaves a note on the front porch. After a heartfelt discussion with her father, Juno accepts that she is in love with Paulie. She confesses her feelings to him, and they share a kiss. Not long after, Juno goes into labor and is rushed to the hospital, where she gives birth to a baby boy. Despite having deliberately not told Paulie because of his track meet, he deduces that she is giving birth anyways after seeing her missing from the stands and rushes to the hospital, where he comforts her as she cries. Vanessa comes to the hospital and joyfully claims the newborn boy as a single adoptive mother. On the wall in the baby's new nursery, Vanessa has framed Juno's note, which reads, "Vanessa, if you're still in, I'm still in, Juno." The film ends in the summertime with Juno and Paulie, now in a happy relationship, playing guitar and singing together. Cast: Elliot Page A as Juno McGuff, pregnant teenager and Paulie's girlfriend. Michael Cera as Paulie Bleecker, the father of Juno's child and Juno's boyfriend. Jennifer Garner as Vanessa Loring, Mark's wife and the prospective adoptive mother of Juno's child. Jason Bateman as Mark Loring, Vanessa's husband and the prospective adoptive father of Juno's child. Allison Janney as Bren McGuff, Juno's stepmother. J.K. Simmons as Mac McGuff, Juno's father. Olivia Thirlby as Leah, Juno's friend. Rainn Wilson as Rollo, convenience store clerk. Valerie Tian as Sue Chin, anti-abortion protester. Emily Perkins as punk abortion clinic receptionist. Ashley Willens as Katrina DeVort. Themes along with Knocked Up and Waitress, two other 2007 films about women facing unplanned pregnancies, Juno was interpreted by some critics as having an anti-abortion theme. Ann Hulbert of Slate magazine believed that Juno undercut both pro-life and pro-choice purism. Jeff Dawson of the Sunday Times believed that the film was inevitably placed in the unwanted pregnancy subgenre, with Knocked Up and Waitress due to its subject matter, but thought that its interpretation as an anti-abortion film only muddied the waters. Hadley Freeman of The Guardian criticized Juno for completing a hat trick of American comedies in the past 12 months that present abortion as unreasonable or even unthinkable, a telling social sign, though she noted, "I don't believe any of these films is consciously designed to be anti-abortion propaganda." A.O. Scott, writing for the New York Times, agreed that Juno has an underlying theme, a message that is not anti-abortion, but rather pro-adulthood. Page commented, "What I get most frustrated at is when people call it a pro-life movie, which is just absurd. The most important thing is the choice is there, and the film completely demonstrates that." Cody and Page have openly stated that they are in favor of abortion rights. Reitman thought that it was fantastic that anti-abortion and abortion rights groups were embracing the film. He said that Juno seems to be a mirror, and people on both sides see themselves in it. Other critics labeled Juno as feminist because of its portrayal of Juno as a confident and intelligent teenage girl. Wesley Morris of the Boston Globe concluded, "Juno serves cool, intelligent girls, something they rarely see in a movie, themselves." Cody said about writing the film, "Women are clever, women are funny, women are sharp, and I wanted to show that these girls were human and not the stereotypical teenage girls that we often see in the media." And there was a lack of authentic teen girl characters. I saw writing this screenplay as an opportunity to create an iconic female. Page praised the film for its positive depiction of teenage girls, describing Juno's character as really refreshing and allowing for new possibilities in what young women can be, and honest but original, completely devoid of stereotype, while also highlighting that girls haven't had that sort of character before. They don't have their catcher in the rye. Page criticized the media perception of the Juno character as a strong woman, arguing that if Juno were a male character, the strength of the character would not be considered remarkable. Reitman was interested in the personal political conflict for Vanessa's character. Feminism has paved the way for Vanessa's career, but ultimately Vanessa wants to be a full-time mother. Production. Development. Diablo Cody was first approached to write a screenplay by film producer Mason Novick, who had previously landed her a book deal for her memoir, Candy Girl, a year in the life of an unlikely stripper, after discovering her blog about stripping. He persuaded her to adapt the book for the screen, but suggested that she first write a screenwriting sample to show studios. That sample became Juno. After deciding on an adoption storyline, Cody collected the stories of adoptees, birth parents, and adoptive parents, including that of her then-husband, an adoptee who reunited with his birth parents after she wrote the film. She also found inspiration in the story of a close friend who had become pregnant in high school and used some details from her friend's experience in the film, such as mistreatment from an ultrasound technician. Much of Juno, however, was based on Cody's own high school experiences. She dated a tic-tac-loving boy similar to Paulie, she was best friends with a cheerleader like Leah, and she used a hamburger phone identical to the one that appears in the film. After writing the screenplay over 7 weeks in the Starbucks section of a Target store in Crystal, Minnesota, Cody compared writing to breathing, seeing Juno as an extension of herself. Novick sent Cody's screenplay to his friend Jason Reitman. By the time Reitman had read halfway through the script, he felt that if he did not direct the film, he would regret it for the rest of his life. Initially, Reitman found it difficult to acquire the script because his first film, Thank You for Smoking, had not been released yet, so he did not have any feature film credits. Other directors, including John Pohl, were considered, but Reitman was chosen and he interrupted work on his own spec script in order to direct Juno. Cody says she had a cynical attitude when writing Juno. I didn't ever think this film would be produced, and indeed the film was delayed by financial problems. After its controversial nature scared off a number of major studios, John Malkovich's production company, Mr. Mudd, took on the project. It was later brought to production company Mandate Pictures by co-producer Jim Miller. The funding originated from the United States. Casting. Having admired his performance in Hard Candy, Reitman cast Page in the lead role, saying that when he read the screenplay for the first time, he pictured Page as Juno. Reitman visited Page on the set of a film on which he was working to offer him the role. He also handed the script to J.K. Simmons, who had featured in his previous film, Thank You for Smoking, not telling him that he intended Simmons to play Mac. Simmons says that after reading the script, he would have been happy to play even the high school teacher who has no speaking lines. Other cast members Reitman had in mind right from the start were Olivia Thirlby, who had originally unsuccessfully auditioned for the role of Juno, and Michael Cera. He took them with Page and Simmons to a Panavision stage in California and shot 45 pages of the script on 35mm film against a black backdrop. He presented this footage to Fox Searchlight as the initial cast. Reitman highlighted the importance of doing a screen test instead of individual auditions, saying, "This is a movie that's all about relationships, and the idea of auditioning people outside of each other, one-on-one with the casting director, didn't make sense." Jennifer Garner, who accepted a lower salary than usual to prevent the film from exceeding its budget, was confirmed by Reitman to have signed onto the project in January 2007. After working with Jason Bateman on The Kingdom, Garner recommended him to Reitman when they first met. Bateman was cast as Mark, the last cast member to be signed. Lucas McFadden, better known as Cut Chemist, a DJ and record producer, makes a cameo appearance as Juno and Paulie's chemistry teacher. McFadden was doing scoring work for Reitman when he received the Juno screenplay and asked McFadden to appear in the film. Reitman thought that it was perfect irony for the chemistry teacher to be played by Cut Chemist. Michael Cera stated that the film had a lot of Canadian influence due to the fact that he and Page were Canadian and that a lot of the other actors originated from Vancouver. Cera's comment was a response to a statement from Peter Howell of the Toronto Star. "I thought Juno was a very Canadian movie, even though it was set in the U.S." Shooting on a budget of $6.5 million, Juno was filmed in and around Vancouver, British Columbia, standing in for Minnesota, where production was originally intended to take place. Although films commonly use a Canada as America location shift for budgetary reasons, Reitman insists the choice of filming location was instead at his request. Filming locations included a house in nearby White Rock as Mark and Vanessa's home, Eric Hamber Secondary School as Dancing Elk High School, and South Surrey's athletic park track as Dancing Elk High School's athletics track. After minimal rehearsal filming took place in February and March 2007, 44 on a 6-week schedule, of which 30 days were designated to filming. The crew was planning to import snow for the film's winter events, but it snowed on location and they were able to reschedule filming to shoot the winter scenes during snowfall, which Second Assistant Director Josie Capcun says resulted in much wider snow shots than originally planned. Although the film was shot out of sequence, the final scene was scheduled for the final day, and after a long period of rain, the crew was intending to shut down production and resume months later to shoot the scene set in summer. But the rain stopped, and they were able to shoot the scene in the sun. That final scene depicted Juno and Paulie singing the Moldy Peaches' Anyone Else But You, and band member Kimya Dawson visited the set to speak to Paige and Cera while they were practicing the song. Music. The movie features several songs performed by Kimya Dawson, as well as her bands Antsy Pants and the Moldy Peaches. According to director Jason Reitman, Paige suggested the Moldy Peaches work as fitting for Juno's character. Reitman recounts, "He went on my computer, played the songs, and I fell in love with it. Diablo and I discussed putting a Moldy Peaches song in it where the characters would sing to each other. I got in touch with Kimya Dawson of the Moldy Peaches, and she started sending me her work, which was beautiful, and that became a lot of the soundtrack." Reitman contacted Dawson, and after reading the film's screenplay, she agreed for her songs to be used in the film, sending him a packet of CDs containing about 120 songs. The songs were almost entirely self-published by Dawson, who says she wrote nothing specifically for Juno, and that all the songs had been performed and recorded before she was contacted to work on the film. Reitman asked her to additionally re-record instrumentals, which included humming over the lyrics of some of her songs. He also contacted composer Matteo Messina, with whom he had previously worked on Thank You for Smoking, to compose the film's incidental score. He gave Messina a collection of Dawson's songs and asked him to create the sound of the film through an instrumental score that replicated the recording quality, tone, feel, and innocence of her music. Messina decided to implement an acoustic guitar feel that was jangled and was really loose like Juno. Experimenting with different guitars, he ended up using Stella, a second-hand guitar belonging to guitarist Billy Katz that he described as kind of tinny, not perfectly in tune, but has all kinds of character. Katz was hired to perform acoustic and classical guitar for the movie's score, using Stella extensively throughout. Paige also suggested Cat Power's cover of the song Sea of Love, which Reitman was hesitant to include as it had already been featured in the 1989 film Sea of Love. However, he decided that its inclusion would mark a new take on the film's cinematic references. Initially, Reitman had conceived of Juno being a fan of glam rock, but rejected it as too inauthentic, and he said he wanted to construct Juno to be into music very real and authentic, making her a fan of punk rock, including the Runaways, Patti Smith and Iggy Pop and the Stooges. He felt that the Sonic Youth cover of Superstar defined Juno and Mark's relationship, Juno preferring the classic 1971 version by the Carpenters, while Mark preferred Sonic Youth's 1994 cover. A Well-Respected Man by the Kinks was a song Reitman had associated with a character from another of his screenplays and says it was heartbreaking when he decided to include the song as an introduction for Paulie instead, despite feeling it suited the scene perfectly. He found children's songwriter Barry Louis Polisar's All I Want Is You after surfing iTunes for hours on end, using different words and names as search terms, and thought that the handmade quality was perfect for the opening titles, which were afterwards made to correspond to the song. The Brunch Bowls jingle Mark writes in the film was composed by advertisement writer Chris Corley, with whom Reitman had previously worked on a set of commercials for Walmart. Design. The film was set out in a sequence of the year's seasons, which, Reitman said, really resonated with me when I read it because they mirror the 3 trimesters of Juno's pregnancy. Because filming took place over only 30 days, Fake flora was used to give the impression of different seasons, while other flora was edited in post-production. Brown leaves were composited onto a fake tree outside Juno's house, and cherry blossom trees outside Leah's house were touched up in a lighter shade of pink to depict autumn. A fan was used to blow leaves around in some scenes, as if the leaves were falling from trees. Fake flowers were used in front of Polly's house at the end of the film to give the impression of summer. Cody was impressed with the production design team's creation of the set from only a few sentences in her script, calling Juno's bedroom a very emotional set for me because it reminded me so much of my own little habitat when I was a teenager. The walls of Juno's room are covered with posters of bands, while Leah's room includes a mural of older men she finds attractive, and Polly's room is overly childlike to indicate his innocence. Production designer Steve Sacklad designed Mark and Vanessa's house with the assumption that Vanessa has probably read every home magazine and tried to copy what's in them as best she could. Costume designer Monique Prudhomme was nominated for a Costume Designers Guild Award in the Excellence in Contemporary Costume Design for Film category. She dressed Vanessa in clothes that were simple and very tasteful, but with an anal retentive quality, and Mark in conservative clothing to complement Vanessa's taste. It was Paige's suggestion that Juno wear flannel shirts and sweater vests. Paige also had to wear 2 sizes of prosthetic belly fitted like a corset in the back, a third real belly that is seen when Juno has an ultrasound, and a variety of sizes of fake breasts. The footage displayed on Juno's ultrasound monitor is of supervising sound designer Scott Sanders' son Matthew and was embedded into the scene in post-production. Opening title sequence. Juno's opening title sequence, depicting a rotoscoped Juno walking through her town while drinking a bottle of Sunny D orange drink, was put together over 7 to 8 months by a small design studio, Shadowplay Studio, based in Los Angeles. Reitman had met the studio's co-founder Gareth Smith in Japan on the short film festival circuit, where they each had short screening. Shadowplay created the opening title sequence for Reitman's previous film, Thank You for Smoking, and he contacted them again when he found out he was going to direct Juno. With vintage 1970s punk rock posters as inspiration, Smith and artist Jenny Lee decided to create a sequence that had texture and a little bit of edge, but also imparted the warmth and heart of the screenplay. In the last days of filming in Vancouver, Paige was photographed with a high-speed camera from a number of angles walking on a treadmill and drinking Sunny D. 900 still images of a walking and drinking Paige were printed out and repeatedly run through a Xerox machine to degrade their quality until the pictures appeared hand-drawn. The pictures were cut out and scanned back onto the computer, then layered onto the background drawn by Lee with compositing software to create a stop-motion animation sequence that corresponded to All I Want Is You by Barry Louis Polisar, the song Reitman had chosen. Shadowplay also designed the title cards for each of the seasons for the film, handmade a custom typeface for the opening title sequence and the closing credits, and collaborated on the design of the soundtrack and the DVD. Distribution. Theatrical release. With a well-received preview first screened on September 1, 2007 at the Telluride Film Festival, Juno premiered on September 8 at the 2007 Toronto International Film Festival and received a standing ovation, which prompted film critic Roger Ebert to say, "I don't know when I've heard a standing ovation so long, loud, and warm." It went on to feature at the Austin Film Festival, Rome Film Festival, London Film Festival, Bahamas International Film Festival, St. Louis International Film Festival, Stockholm International Film Festival, International Thessaloniki Film Festival, Gijón International Film Festival, Palm Springs International Film Festival, and the International Film Festival Rotterdam, earning awards and nominations at several. Although Juno was originally intended to open in theaters on December 15, 2007, the opening date was moved forward to take advantage of the positive reviews preceding its release, and opened in limited release on December 5th, playing in only 7 theaters in Los Angeles and New York City. The film opened in an additional 13 cities and around 25 theaters on December 14th, expanding further on December 21st before entering wide release on December 25th. Promotion. Anthony Bresnikan of USA Today said in a 2008 article that Juno is one of 3 films that were orchestrated to start off as word-of-mouth favorites among devoted moviegoers. Following Juno's release, Fox Searchlight sent hamburger phones styled similarly to that used by Juno in the film to journalists and critics to entice them to review the film. Though the phones were originally distributed in small numbers to viewers at promotional events, companies not affiliated with Fox Searchlight began to produce and sell the phones on eBay and other online stores. In the month after the film's release, sales of the phone on eBay increased by 759%, and it was named one of the 10 cool gifts for film buffs by Entertainment Weekly. Home media. The film was released on DVD and Blu-ray disc on April 15, 2008 by 20th Century Fox Home Entertainment. It is available in a single-disc DVD edition, which includes the movie along with an audio commentary by director Reitman and writer Cody, 11 deleted scenes, a gag reel, a gag take, including a profanity-laden blow-up by Rainn Wilson, a cast and crew jam, and screen tests. The 2-disc DVD edition includes the same extra content and 4 additional featurettes. Way beyond our maturity level, Juno, Leah Bleeker, Diablo Cody is Totally Boss, Jason Reitman for Shiz, and Honest to Blog creating Juno, while the second disc is a DRM encrypted version of the film for portable players. The Blu-ray version includes all the 2-disc DVD edition extras and 2 additional featurettes. Fox Movie Channel presents Juno World Premiere, and Fox Movie Channel presents Casting Session. Reception. Box office performance. In limited release and playing in only 7 theaters in Los Angeles and New York City, Juno grossed $420,130 over its debut weekend, averaging $60,016 per screen. Juno earned back its initial budget of $6.5 million in 20 days, the first 19 of which were when the film was in limited release. When Juno became Fox Searchlight's first film to surpass $100 million at the box office, the company's president Peter Rice issued the statement, "This is an astonishing feat for us, and the film has surpassed all our expectations. We knew this film had crossover potential, and it has resonated with audiences all across the country." The film has grossed $143,495,265 in the United States and $88,877,000 in other territories, for a total worldwide gross of $232,372,681. It was also the highest grossing of the 5 Best Picture nominees for the 80th Academy Awards. Critical reaction. Juno received highly positive reviews from critics. On the review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, the film has a 94% approval rating from critics based on 217 reviews, with an average rating of 8.10. The site's consensus states, "One of the brightest, funniest comedies of the year, Juno's smart script and direction are matched by assured performances in a coming-of-age story with a 21st century twist, making it the best-reviewed comedy film on the website in 2007. On Metacritic, the film had an average score of 81 out of 100, based on 38 reviews. Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times gave the film 4 stars and called it just about the best movie of the year. Has there been a better performance this year than Elliot Page's creation of Juno? I don't think so. Ebert placed Juno at number 1 on his annual Best Of list. The film also ranks at number 463 in Empire magazine's 2008 list of the 500 greatest movies of all time. Juno McGuff also ranked number 56 on Empire's list of the 100 greatest movie characters of all time. Paste magazine named it one of the 50 best movies of the decade, 2000-2009, ranking it at number 15. In June 2010, Entertainment Weekly named Juno one of the 100 greatest characters of the last 20 years. However, not all critics share the positive view towards Juno. David Edelstein of New York Magazine felt that the film was desperate to be a movie that confers hipness on teens, that makes kids want to use the same slang and snap up the soundtrack. Music reviewer Jim DeRogatis criticized the film's stylized dialogue and what he saw as a casual take on abortion and Juno's naivete in becoming pregnant, claiming, as an unapologetically old-school feminist, the father of a soon-to-be teenage daughter, a reporter who regularly talks to actual teens as part of his beat, and a plain old moviegoer, I hated this movie. The Juno Effect. In 2008, after 17 students under 16 years of age at Gloucester High School in Massachusetts became pregnant, Time magazine called it the Juno Effect. Time stated that some adults dismissed the statistic as an outlier, while others accused films such as Juno and Knocked Up for glamorizing teenage pregnancy. Christelle Miller, an adolescent psychology professor at University of Minnesota Duluth, stated that the Juno Effect is how media glamorizes pregnancy and how pregnancy is also redemptive of any past problems. After Senator John McCain named Alaska Governor Sarah Palin as his running mate on the Republican presidential ticket, it was revealed in September 2008 that Governor Palin's daughter, Bristol, age 17, was pregnant with the child of another teenager. News reports and editorials termed Bristol Palin's pregnancy as the latest episode in the debate over teen pregnancy, of which Juno was a part, while conservative commentators made comparisons between Bristol Palin's pregnancy and the film. Noted New Republic literary editor Lianne Wieseltier, the Republicans wanted a new conversation and they got one. Juno in Juno. Fox News' Roger Friedman wondered, Juno at once violated and vindicated conservative values. The question is, will the public rally round Bristol Palin the way it did Juno, or will it reject her for getting in this situation in the first place? Juno actor Jason Bateman defended the film. Unfortunately, he said, we've had these instances where guys kill people because of what they hear in rock and roll lyrics or some garbage like that. Look, if you're going to blame a movie or song for your actions, whether they be good or bad, I think you're looking at the wrong things to influence your life. I think people should look to other areas of their life for lessons and guidance, mainly parents or teachers or friends or whomever. That should probably be where you should point your eyes and ears. Amy Benfer of Salon.com wrote in 2010 that, according to figures released by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, pregnancy rates for all teenagers dropped 2% between 2007 and 2008, meaning that the slight uptick in teen pregnancy rates between 2005 and 2006 were probably just an anomaly and not some heinous trend brought about by pop culture, and that if there had been such a thing as a Juno effect, it would have caused pregnancies to go down, not up. She criticized proponents of the theory, stating that they believe that teenagers somehow lose all ability to evaluate any nuance or context in that woman's particular situation and instead make some sort of primitive cause and effect connection. And that, by talking about pregnant girls, and most of all by daring to portray some of them as ordinary, even likable, we'd get way more babies having babies. She concluded that depicting teen parents may not glamorize them so much as humanize them. You know, that thing that happens when one person recognizes that someone else is a person too. So, now that we can firmly state that realistically depicting the lives of the tiny percentage of girls who do become pregnant won't necessarily contaminate the rest of them, it's time to stop worrying and ask what we can do to help. In light of Georgia's anti-abortion law, Diablo Cody said in 2019 she would not have written Juno now that people perceive it as an anti-choice film. In 2022, she said, back in 2008, I got a letter from some administrator at my Catholic high school thanking me for writing a movie that was in line with the school's values. And I was like, what have I done? My objective as an artist is to be a traitor to that culture, not to uplift it. But also, I have no regrets about writing the movie. I do think it's important that I continue to clarify my feelings about it, because the last thing I would ever want is for someone to interpret the movie as anti-choice. That is a huge paranoia of mine. I've never really thought about revisiting the film. It kind of feels like something that should stay preserved in amber. But I would rather have this account be out there than my silence being misinterpreted. Accolade. Juno received nominations at the 80th Academy Awards for Best Picture, Best Director for Reitman, Best Actress for Paige, and won Best Original Screenplay for Cody. Reitman expressed disappointment that Juno was ruled ineligible for the Genie Award nominations. It's a Canadian director, Canadian stars, Canadian cast, Canadian crew, shot in Canada. How are we not eligible for a Genie when David Cronenberg's film Promises about Russians living in London shot in England with a British crew and British cast is eligible? I'm sorry, but somebody's going to have to explain that to me. Sarah Morton, the head of the Academy of Canadian Cinema and Television, issued a statement explaining that the film had never been submitted for Genie Award consideration by its studio. The Hollywood Reporter explained that Genie rules define Canadian films as financed at least in part by Canadian sources, and because American companies Mandate Pictures and Fox Searchlight were the sole funders, Juno was ineligible. Nonetheless, Genie spokesman Chris McDowell said that while the film was not evaluated for eligibility since it was not submitted, financing is one of the criteria, but it's not everything. Despite this, the film was eligible for the 2008 Canadian Comedy Awards, receiving 2 wins from 3 nominations. Soundtrack. Juno's soundtrack, music from the motion picture Juno, was released December 11, 2007. Features 19 songs from Barry Louis Polisar, Belle and Sebastian, Buddy Holly, Cat Power, The Kinks, Mott the Hoople, Sonic Youth and the Velvet Underground, and most prominently Kimya Dawson and her former bands The Moldy Peaches and Antsy Pants. Under the Rhino Entertainment record label, it became the first #1 soundtrack since the Dreamgirls soundtrack, 20th Century Fox's first #1 soundtrack since the Titanic soundtrack, and Rhino's first #1 album, topping the American Billboard 200 music charts in its 4th week of release. Rhino announced in March 2008 that Juno B-Sides, Almost Adopted Songs, would be available through digital-only release, a second volume of songs that were considered for but not included in the film. The 15 tracks include songs by previously featured artists Kimya Dawson, Barry Louis Polisar, Belle and Sebastian, and Buddy Holly, as well as Astrid Gilberto, the Bristols, Jr., James and the Late Guitar, Trio Los Panchos, Yola Tengo, and Paige singing Zub Zub, written by Diablo Cody as part of the script in a deleted scene. Rhino also released a deluxe edition on November 25, 2008, containing both the original soundtrack as well as B-sides in a 2-disc set, along with storyboards from the film and additional liner notes from Reitman. Jason Reitman's Juno is just about the best movie of the year. It is very smart, very funny, and very touching. It begins with the pacing of a screwball comedy and ends as a portrait of characters we have come to love. Strange how during Juno's hip dialogue and cocky bravado, we begin to understand the young woman inside and we want to hug her. Has there been a better performance this year than Ellen Page's creation of Juno? I don't think so. If most actors agree that comedy is harder than drama, then harder still is comedy, depending on a quick mind, utter self-confidence, and an ability to stop just short of going too far. Page's presence and timing are extraordinary. I have seen her in only 2 films. She is only 20, and I think she will be one of the great actors of her time. But don't let my praise get in the way of sharing how much fun this movie is. It is so very rare to sit with an audience that leans forward with delight and is in step with every turn and surprise of an uncommonly intelligent screenplay. It is so rare to hear laughter that is surprised, unexpected, and delighted. So rare to hear it coming during moments of recognition when characters reflect exactly what we'd be thinking, just a moment before we get around to thinking it. So rare to feel the audience joined into one warm, shared enjoyment. So rare to hear a movie applauded. Ellen Page plays Juno McGuff, a 16-year-old girl who decides it is time for her to experience sex and enlists her best friend Polly, Michael Cera, in an experiment he is not too eager to join. Of course, she gets pregnant, and after a trip to an abortion clinic that leaves her cold, she decides to have the child. But what to do with it? She believes she's too young to raise it herself. Her best girlfriend Leah, Olivia Thurby, suggests looking at the ads for adoptive parents in the Penny Saver they have Desperately Seeking Spawn right next to the pet ads. Juno informs her parents in a scene that decisively establishes how original this film is going to be. It does that by giving us almost the only lovable parents in the history of teen comedies. Bren, Allison Janney, and Mac, J.K. Simmons. They're older and wiser than most teen parents are ever allowed to be, and warmer and with better instincts and quicker senses of humor. Informed that the sheepish Paulie is the father, Mac turns to his wife and shares an aside that brings down the house. Later, Bren tells him, of course it wasn't his idea. How infinitely more human and civilized their response is than all the sad routine humor about parents who are enraged at boyfriends. Mac goes with Juno to meet the would-be adoptive parents, Vanessa and Mark Loring, Jennifer Garner and Jason Bateman. They live in one of those houses that look like Martha Stewart finished a second before they arrived. Vanessa is consumed with her desire for a child, and Mark is almost a child himself, showing Juno my room, where he keeps the residue of his ambition to be a rock star. What he does now at around 40 is write jingles for commercials. We follow Juno through all 9 months of her pregnancy, which she pretends to treat as mostly an inconvenience. It is uncanny how Paige shows us, without seeming to show us, the deeper feelings beneath Juno's wisecracking exterior. The screenplay by first-timer Diablo Cody is a subtle masterpiece of construction. As buried themes slowly emerge, hidden feelings become clear, and we are led, but not too far, into wondering if Mark and Juno might possibly develop unwise feelings about one another. There are moments of instinctive lightning comedy. Bren's response to a nurse's attitude during Juno's sonar scan, and her theory about doctors when Juno wants a painkiller during childbirth, moments that blindside us with truth, as when Mac and Juno talk about the possibility of true and lasting love. Moments that reveal Paulie as more than he seems. What he says when Juno says he's cool and doesn't even need to try. And the breathtaking scene when Juno and Vanessa run into each other in the mall, and the future of everyone is essentially decided. Jennifer Garner glows in that scene. After 3 viewings, I feel like I know some scenes by heart, but I don't want to spoil your experience by quoting one-liners and revealing surprises. The film's surprises, in any event, involve not merely the plot, but insights into the characters, including feelings that coil along just beneath the surface so that they seem inevitable when they're revealed. The film has no wrong scenes and no extra scenes and flows like running water. There are 2 repeating motifs: the enchanting songs, So Simple and True, by Kimya Dawson, and the seasonal appearances of Paulie's high school cross-country team running past us with dogged consistency, Paulie often bringing up the rear, until his last run ends with Paulie, sweaty in running shorts, racing to Juno's room after her delivery. Juno McGuff, the title character of Jason Reitman's new film, is 16 and pregnant. But Juno could not be further from the kind of hand-wringing, moralizing melodrama that such a condition might suggest. Juno, played by the poised, frighteningly talented Ellen Page, is too odd and too smart to be either a case study or the object of leering disapproval. She assesses her problem and weighs her response to it with disconcerting sang-froid. It's not that Juno treats her pregnancy as a joke, but rather that in the sardonic spirit of the screenwriter, Diablo Cody, she can't help finding humor in it. Tiny of frame and huge of belly, Juno utters wisecracks as if they were breathing exercises, referring to herself as the cautionary whale. At first, her sarcasm is bracing and also a bit jarring. "Hello, I'd like to procure a hasty abortion," she says when she calls a women's health clinic, but as Juno follows her from pregnancy test to delivery room and hastily retreats from the prospect of abortion, it takes on surprising delicacy and emotional depth. The snappy one-liners are a brilliant distraction, Miss Day. Cody's way of clearing your throat for the lump you're likely to find there in the movie's last scenes. The first time I saw Juno, I was shocked to find myself tearing up at the end, since I'd spent the first 15 minutes or so gnashing my teeth and checking my watch. The passive-aggressive pseudo-folk songs, the self-consciously clever dialogue, the generic, instantly mockable suburban setting. If you can find Sundance on a map, you'll swear you've been here before. But Juno, which played at the Telluride and Toronto Film Festivals, not the one in Park City, Utah, respects the idiosyncrasies of its characters rather than exaggerating them or holding them up for ridicule. And like Juno herself, the film outgrows its own mannerisms and defenses, evolving from a coy, knowing farce into a heartfelt, serious comedy. A good deal of the credit for this goes to Miss Page, a 20-year-old Canadian who is able to seem, in the space of a single scene, mature beyond her years and disarmingly childlike. The naivete that peeks through her flippant, wised-up facade is essential, since part of the movie's point is that Juno is not quite as smart or as capable as she thinks she is. It's not simply that she has impulsive, unprotected sex with her friend Polly Bleecker, Michael Cera, or that she decides, against the advice of parents and friends, to have the baby and give it up for adoption. These indeed are choices she is prepared to defend and to live with. Rather, Juno's immaturity resides in her familiar adolescent assumption that she understands the world better than her elders do, and that she can finesse the unintended consequences of her decisions. The grown-ups, at first, seem like familiar caricatures of adolescent-centered cinema, square, sad, and clueless. But Juno's father, J.K. Simmons, and stepmother, Allison Janney, turn out to be complicated, intelligent people, too, and not just because they are played by two of the best character actors around. Miss Cody's script and Mr. Reitman's understated, observant direction allow the personalities of the characters to emerge slowly and to change in credible and unpredictable ways. This is especially true of Mark, Jason Bateman, and Vanessa, Jennifer Garner, the baby's potential adoptive parents. The audience's initial impression of them, like Juno's, is of stereotypically smug yuppies trapped in rickety conventions of heterosexual domesticity. Vanessa is uptight and materialistic, while Mark tends the guttering flame of his youthful hipness, watching cult horror movies and trading alternative rock mix CDs with Juno. Juno is, on the surface at least, a familiar type, surrounding herself with and expressing herself by means of kitschy consumer detritus, she calls the clinic on a hamburger phone, and pop cultural ephemera. She could be the hero of a Judd Apatow comedy, like, say, Mr. Cera, the boneless wonder of Superbad, and a purely delightful presence here, except, of course, that she's female. Miss Cody, Mr. Reitman, and Ms. Page have conspired, intentionally or not, to produce a feminist, girl-powered rejoinder and complement to Knocked Up. Despite what most products of the Hollywood Comedy Boys Club would have you believe, it is possible to possess both a uterus and a sense of humor. Juno also shares with Knocked Up an underlying theme, a message that is not anti-abortion but rather pro-adulthood. It follows its heroine, and by the end she has earned that title on a twisty path toward responsibility and greater self-understanding. This is the course followed by most coming-of-age stories, though not many are so daring in their treatment of teenage pregnancy, which this film flirts with presenting not just as bearable but attractive. Kids, please, heed the cautionary wail. But in the meantime, have a good time at Juno. Bring your parents, too. Juno, Jason Reitman, is successful at two things: keeping it simple and keeping the zingers flowing. Telling the story of an accidental teenage pregnancy often invites overzealous melodrama. However, our eponymous hero's Bildungsroman takes more notes from Amy Sherman Palladino's Gilmore Girls than anything. The emphasis is less on stakes and more on wit. The film is stuffed to the gills with quirky characters who articulate the world around them in unique ways. The centerpiece is Juno herself, Elliot Page, who packs a deck of cards worth of wordplay and wisecracks to downplay and describe her pregnancy. From lines like "they call me the cautionary whale" to "look at me, I'm a planet," Juno's playful language expertly waters down the gravity of the situation. Even the most tertiary of tertiary characters manage to get cracks in, such as Rainn Wilson's store clerk remarking to Juno that her ego is prego after her third pregnancy test comes up positive, which, to be fair, had what Juno described as a plus that looks like a division sign. Despite the dryness of the writing, it never veers into mean-spiritedness. If anything, the humor is self-effacing, making for a wholesome coming-of-age comedy. Polly Bleecker, the father of Juno's child, isn't an absentee. Rather, Michael Cera plays a dorky runner who enjoys eating Tic Tacs almost as much as he is madly in love with her. The actor himself is the icing on the cake. You just want to pinch his cheeks. Meanwhile, her parents, J.K. Simmons and Allison Janney, support her decisions with fierce love and admonishing humor. There are plenty of rumors flying around behind Juno's back, but we never bear witness to this gossip. There is one sequence in which the pregnant Juno parts a cluster of students like the Red Sea as she gets odd looks going down a hallway, but that's about it. Juno's accidental pregnancy is never framed in a tragic light, but posed as an unexpected bump along the way. It allows the goofiness, awkwardness, and melancholy of teenage life to shine through, preventing its quip-heavy writing from coming across as overwritten. Ironically, by undercutting the cleverness of its script, the film finds its depth. Juno opts to give the baby up for adoption rather than going through with an abortion, giving the reason that the clinic smelled like a dentist's office. While Juno's humor helps her deal with her situation, there's also a carefree abandon to it that signals a teenage immaturity. We don't see this in Vanessa, Jennifer Garner, the potential adoptive mother of Juno's child, but we witness it tenfold in her husband, Mark, Jason Bateman. He is essentially Peter Pan, an obstinate teenager inside an adult's body. Like Juno, he loves rock and roll and horror movies, but we also see his reluctance to take his potential parenthood seriously. While Vanessa brings up the concept of nesting in preparing the baby's room, he asks whether she's planning to rustle up some sticks and spit. In the beginning, Vanessa introduces herself as someone born to be a mother, opposite Juno's desire to not be one at this moment. The lesson she teaches isn't about motherhood or aligning with gender roles, but about being honest about one's feelings and embodying vulnerability. Juno finds her off-putting at first because they don't connect on a verbal level. Instead of cracking jokes, Garner brings an almost inhuman warmth, love, and honesty into her dialogue. She communicates her feelings and fears, while Mark shields his insecurities with humor. With her vulnerability comes a strange intuition, whether it's simply detecting the difference between nearly identical shades of yellow, or that she seems to infer that Juno's child will be a boy just by touching her stomach. The latter may be because of a deleted scene, but it's here nonetheless. Vanessa knows what she wants, while Mark doesn't, and Juno gets caught in the middle of this saddening miscommunication. The film teaches us a simple lesson about love and the double-edged sword of playful, humorous language. Jokes can make a loved one laugh and feel better, but they can also be a hiding place. The language of love can be funny, but it must always be honest. Juno isn't a cautionary tale about how teenage pregnancy is a death knell. Instead, it is about learning to be vulnerable as a part of growing up. Mistakes can happen along the way, but life remains long and rich so long as one approaches its contradictions and absurdities with the correct weapons. In any case, the movie is just a positive delight, a source of guaranteed smiles, silly songs, and sweetness. It's like maple syrup shot on digital. Anna Nicole Kidman was once famously described as pure theatrical Viagra. In this thoroughly delightful teen comedy, the fully clothed Ellen Page is pure cinematic Prozac. With its smart dialogue by newcomer Diablo Cody and a miraculously effective and evocative lo-fi soundtrack, the film has the ephemeral charm of a great pop song. Page plays Juno McGuff, a hyper-articulate 16-year-old who has cultivated sarky irony to insulate her against the pain and awfulness of being a teenager. In a spirit of experiment, she has had sex for the first time with Paulie, Michael Cera, with whom she was once in a band. Paulie was also surrendering his virginity, or as Juno puts it, going live. As ill fortune would have it, Juno gets pregnant the first time out and is catapulted in a world of genuine grown-up experience to match and exceed her super cool mannerisms. Unable to express his deeply hurt and confused feelings, Paulie shrugs and lets Juno do what she wants, and she decides to keep the baby and find a couple for adoption. This turns out to be the uptight yuppies Mark, Jason Bateman, and Vanessa, Jennifer Garner. Mark is a cool composer with a guitar collection, secretly unreconciled to fatherhood. Inevitably, he begins a dangerous flirtation with Juno, whose baby threatens to destroy the marriage it was intended to complete and to undermine Juno's own future in ways she had not begun to imagine. It may be that, like Judd Apatow's comedy Knocked Up, Juno will be criticized for neglecting to endorse abortion or to reflect that this is the option that is the most tenable in real life. In this paper, Hadley Freeman recently wrote an insightful article noting that Juno is not the product of an anti-abortion culture, but one which has taken abortion for granted. Absolutely right. But this needn't mean abortion rights are being slighted. It would be a relief to see a culture in which, say, evolution was taken for granted. Juno is a fiction with irresistible charm and wit, and Paige carries everything before her, creating a character with a powerful sense of right and wrong, an overwhelming belief in monogamy, and a nascent talent for leadership. The film owes its power to Ellen Page's lovely performance and to Cody's funny script, which treats the subject of status with shrewdness and compassion. If women all too often find status only in the dangerous and expendable commodity of sexual attractiveness, then in getting pregnant, Juno would seem to have catastrophically abandoned this one tiny prerogative and looked stupid into the bargain. Yet she finds that as a pregnant woman, she is the center of attention, and in offering her child for adoption, she has dizzying power over rich adults. It is a power that gives her insight and clarity and humbles her elders. Like I said, this film is a happy pill. Juno may well be 2007's little film that could. You know the category, there's one every year. Last year's entry was Little Miss Sunshine. Word of mouth for Juno has been building since its world premiere at the Telluride Film Festival in early September. The film almost came out of nowhere. Almost, but not quite. It then rode a wave of positive buzz to Toronto. The marketers were out in full force, giving away boxes of orange Tic Tacs. If you see the movie, you'll understand. The result of the buzz more than the breath mints was packed screenings. Now, with visions of little golden statues dancing in their heads, the men and women behind the movie are cautiously hoping more for a visit from Oscar than some fat guy in a red suit. If one was to categorize Juno, it would fall into the hybrid coming-of-age teen romantic comedy category. But as movies like Superbad have shown, such labels aren't necessarily negatives. Juno, directed by Jason Reitman, thank you for smoking, is smart, witty, and engaging. Three ingredients that, when applied to any film, comprise a recipe for success. Juno has a great heroine and is blessed by a screenplay that doesn't try to do too much and finds the perfect ending. It's a little odd that this is the third comedy this year to focus on pregnancy. I enjoyed both Knocked Up and Waitress, but Juno gets my vote for the best of the three. Juno McGuff, Ellen Page, is 16 years old and pregnant. She takes 3 home pregnancy tests to be sure, but the results can't be denied. Her boyfriend, Paulie, Michael Cera, is as befuddled by the news as she is. After all, they only did it once, although that's obviously enough. And to his credit, he doesn't do the most insensitive thing imaginable and ask if she's sure he's the father. At first, Juno considers an abortion, but she doesn't like the vibe she gets at the clinic. So, after revealing the truth to her supportive father, J.K. Simmons, and stepmother, Allison Janney, she goes to the desperately seeking spawn section of the penny saver to try to find a good mommy and daddy for her unborn child. Someone is going to get a blessing out of this garbage dump of a situation. Enter Vanessa, Jennifer Garner, and Mark, Jason Bateman, Mr. and Mrs. Wonderful. They're ready to adopt, or at least Vanessa is. Mark, on the other hand, seems more interested in watching old horror movies and discussing music with the prospective mother of his future child. Juno isn't one of those laugh riots that will have audience members rolling in the aisles getting fake popcorn butter and spilled soda all over their clothing. Instead, it's funny in a sassy way, the kind of humor that causes a lot of smiles and chuckles to go along with the occasional stomach-jiggling laugh. The script is polished to near perfection. Almost everything that Juno says is worth listening to, whether it's dialogue that comes out of her mouth or her thoughts expressed in a voiceover narrative. While plenty of credit can be heaped upon director Reitman and his collaborator Diablo Cody, the stripper-turned-screenwriter, the lead actress deserves as much praise as either of them, if not more. I'm not of the opinion that this is a star-making turn for Ellen Page. That distinction went to last year's Searing Hard Candy, but Juno confirms that she is much more than a flash in the pan. She's someone to watch. She may not get a Best Actress nomination for her role here. That depends too much on politics for a prediction at this time, but if one comes in her direction, it's no fluke. She gets able support from a strong cast. Superbad's Michael Cera creates the kind of genuine, timid guy who's too rarely seen in teen films. Allison Janney and J.K. Simmons are the parents every pregnant girl would love to have, although they wish for a school suspension instead of the bun-in-the-oven news. Jennifer Garner is perfectly sincere and not at all like we have seen her before, and Jason Bateman portrays the most human character he has played in a while. However, all of these actors, as good and experienced as they may be, are simply orbiting Paige's star. This is her film from start to finish. Juno is the kind of the film where a viewer almost needs to look for a reason to dislike it for it not to work. It's charming without being saccharine, it's funny without being rude or dishonest, it's smart without being smart-assed, and it's got enough heart to keep the comedic elements in check. When I was done smiling, the movie gave me something to think about as well. Where were girls like this when I was in high school? Someone like Juno would have had me from the first bell. Not that it was a bad film, but Juno is never for a second as great as its reputation, and is inferior in every way to Adrienne Shelley's similarly themed but infinitely more charming waitress. My biggest problem with the film, interestingly enough, was Diablo Cody's much ballyhooed screenplay. Whereas most people have seen charm and wit, I saw self-conscious quirkiness and an excessive smugness that I found off-putting. It all centers around a precocious 16-year-old girl named Juno, who after a single night of passion with her best friend Polly, Michael Cera, becomes pregnant and decides to put it up for adoption. She finds an ad in a sale paper for a couple of wealthy yuppies, Jennifer Garner and Jason Bateman, who are desperate for a child of their own, and ends up forging an unexpected relationship with them as her pregnancy causes her to grow up faster than she had originally planned. It's not a wholly original premise, but Reitman treats the material well. The film is moderately likable and coasts on Paige's winning personality, but the real shining light of Juno is Garner, who turns in a heartbreaking performance as a woman who wants nothing more in the world than to be another, but can't do it on her own. She is the emotional core, and the only thing that really lends the film any gravity. The rest seems to be filled with zinging one-liners, but very little substance. Yes, the jokes are clever, but I never felt a beating heart behind them outside of Garner. Now, I know it sounds like I think this is a bad film. I don't. I just felt the need to explain why I don't like it as much as everyone else seems to. I have seen many other comedies that I thought were better in 2007. I thought Margot at the Wedding was sharper, Waitress was sweeter, Knocked Up was funnier, Superbad had more teenage insight, and Great World of Sound was more original. Juno is a well enough made film. It should put Drek like the Heartbreak Kid to shame, but this is no masterpiece. Nor is it anywhere near Best Picture material, the way many have been saying. It is a pleasant diversion with some funny one-liners and nice moments, mostly courtesy of Garner, but overall I found the experience, well, lacking. I know I'm in the minority here, and maybe I missed something. Who knows, I may return to it another day in another frame of mind and feel differently. But right now I feel that Juno is an okay film that got mistaken for a great one, and is the most grossly overpraised film of 2007. Juno defies expectations at every turn, giving the slip to anything saccharine or trite or didactic, looking to its characters for insight and complexity, reveling in dialogue that is artificial yet witty and articulate, and most crucially, taking a presumably stale storyline and making it into a buoyant comedy. The film, the second directed by Jason Reitman and first written by professional stripper-turned-writer Diablo Cody, detonates wisecracks every step of the way, yet never completely disguises the fact that this is a comedy from a couple of moralists determined to portray the great human values in love and friendship. The Fox Searchlight picture, slated for a December release, looks like a feel-good movie for audiences and studio alike. The titular performance by 20-year-old Ellen Page is a breakout sensation that can only further boost the film's chances this holiday season. Actually, all performances are sharp, which shows what can happen when actors get to play characters and deliver lines that bristle with originality. Cody certainly knows how to write scenes that move off-center as she creates a world of teens, high school, and suburban families that looks typical, yet is anything but. Juno McGuff Page is a super smart, cool 16-year-old, named after Zeus's wife, whose single experimentation with sex with her best male friend Polly, a touching Michael Cera, results in pregnancy. After visiting an abortion clinic to procure a hasty abortion, she thinks better of the idea and falls back on Plan B. She decides to have the baby and place it with a family through private adoption. She finds the perfect couple in the local penny saver, right next to exotic pet adoptions. These are Vanessa, Jennifer Grant, and Mark, Jason Bateman. All this legwork comes before reporting her situation and solution, at the urging of best friend Leah, Olivia Thirlby, to her parents. That scene is a perfect example of how Cody defies expectations. Juno's gruff yet kind dad, J.K. Simmons, takes the news with equanimity, even saying of the father-to-be, "I didn't think he had it in him." Stepmom Bren, Allison Janney, had rather hoped the bad news would be that Juno was into drugs or expelled, but goes to work to support her stepdaughter with a program of prenatal vitamins. The thing about Juno is that she is much older than her years and must see to everyone, especially her baby's new parents. She develops a rapport with Mark through music. He turns out to be a composer of commercial jingles and horror flicks. "You have the best taste in slasher movies," she enthuses. But all is not right in the couple's relationship. This makes her despair, not only for her baby, but for herself in the future. Do all relationships, her mother essentially abandoned her, fizzle and die? She takes another look at Polly, the boy she left behind who has come to love her. The dialogue, especially coming from the teens, has a hip eloquence, coining phrases and juxtaposing arresting, though sometimes corny images that startle the ear. Juno's fetus is described as a sea monkey. She doesn't just need to piss, but to pee like Seabiscuit. She declares everyone at school sees her teen pregnancy as a cautionary whale. This may sound rather coy, but Cody's dialogue has a definite rhythm, and Reitman directs his actors to deliver the words in the rapid-fire precision of a 30s screwball comedy. Indeed, all scenes develop a rhythm and inner logic that bring the movie to often startling revelations and insights. Page never succumbs to the cuteness such a sassy character might encourage. There is a straightforward honesty and rigorous intellectual curiosity about Juno McGuff. She may use a cell phone shaped like a hamburger and argue the merits of various popular musical movements, but she is a vulnerable teen underneath all that maturity. Thirlby and Cera are refreshing in their roles as kids with smarts. When Juno tells Polly he can be cool without really trying, he admits in one of the movie's best lines that he actually tries very hard. The Canadian production presents a slightly idealized, maybe a bit stylized suburbia in which this odd yet endearing triumph of comic smartness can take place. Juno, Ellen Page, a precocious and spunky 16-year-old, has sex with her boyfriend, Polly Bleecker, Michael Cera, in a big, comfortable chair. Later, after taking several pregnancy tests in a row at a drugstore, Juno discovers that it truly was a momentous event. Since, as she puts it, pregnancy can lead to an infant, she makes a hasty trip to a clinic to get an abortion, but she cannot bring herself to do it. Knowing she's not equipped to raise a child, she decides to give the baby up for adoption. All she wants is for the child to have a loving family, and Mark, Jason Bateman, and Vanessa Loring, Jennifer Garner, seem to be perfect. Juno's best friend Leah, Olivia Thirlby, finds their ad for a child in the Penny Saver newspaper right next to the ads for exotic birds. Juno's working-class dad, Mac, J.K. Simmons, and stepmother, Brenda, Allison Janney, are taken aback by the news, but immediately offer to stand by their daughter and support her in every way they can. Mac insists on going along to meet the yuppie prospective parents who live in one of those McMansion houses in a suburban development. They have tried to adopt before and know that it is a hard road fraught with difficulties. Juno is very upfront with them. She doesn't want to sell her baby, and she'll be happy to keep them informed about how it's cooking. After the deal is sealed with the papers prepared by their lawyer, the Lorings seem quite relieved. Juno, only guessing at what lies ahead, admits it would be great all around if she could just give birth as soon as possible and make the transfer as simple as possible. "Can't we just kick it old school? I could just put the baby in a basket and send it your way. You know, like Moses in the reeds." Juno is directed by Jason Reitman, who demonstrated his facility for working with quick-witted and snappy dialogue in Thank You for Smoking. The screenplay by Diablo Cody is one of the brightest, funniest, and best of the year. But what really shines here is the superlative performance by Canadian Ellen Page. She makes Juno into a spunky and idiosyncratic young woman who always has something interesting to say. On the ethical level, she is a kind and generous soul whose exquisite act of selfless love is nothing short of a miracle to Vanessa, a woman who feels her life is not complete without a child. Juno's teenage pregnancy compels her to grow up fast and to make important decisions on a regular basis. She has several close encounters with Mark Loring and discovers she shares with him a love of music and a passion for schlock horror movies, which complicates her already jumbled life. At school, she has to deal with all the stares and snickers of her classmates. And when Juno finds out that Paulie is taking another girl to the prom, she has a snit fit. Remarkably, Juno bears all the challenges of her pregnancy very well, and despite her quip to her dad that she's dealing with things way beyond my maturity level, she demonstrates that her heart is big enough to take it all in and give back in abundance. A final note of praise to the wonderful songs by Kimya Dawson. Special DVD features include a commentary by director Jason Reitman and writer Diablo Cody, deleted scenes, a gag reel and a gag take, cast and crew jam, screen tests, way beyond our maturity level, Juno, Leah Bleeker, Diablo Cody is totally boss, Jason Reitman for shiz, and Honest to Blog. Creating Juno. Juno is the kind of the film where a viewer almost needs to look for a reason to dislike it for it not to work. It's charming without being saccharine. It's funny without being rude or dishonest. It's smart without being smartass, and it's got enough heart to keep the meek elements in check. When I was done smiling, the movie gave me something to think about as well. Where were girls like this? When I was in high school, someone like Juno would have had me from the first bell. More details. Juno defies expectations at every turn, giving the slip to anything saccharine or trid or dactic, looking to its characters for insight and complexity, reveling in dialogue that is artificial yet witty and articulate, and most crucially taking a presumably stale storyline and making it into a buoyant comedy. The film, the second directed by Jason Mann and first written by professional stripper-turned-writer Diablo Cody, detonates wisecracks every step of the way, yet never completely disguises the fact that this is a comedy from a couple of moralists. Determined to portray the great human values in love and friendship, the Fox Searchlight picture slated for a December release looks like a feel-good movie for audiences and studio alike. The titular performance by 20-year-old Ellen Page is a breakout sensation that can only further boost the film's chances. This holiday season, actually all performances are sharp, which shows what can happen when actors get to play characters and deliver lines that bristle with originality. Cody certainly knows how to write scenes that move off center as she creates a world of teens, high school, and suburban families that looks typical, yet is anything but Juno. McGuff Page is a super smart, cool 16-year-old named after Zeus' wife whose single experimentation with sex with her best male friend Paulie, a touching Michael Cera, results in pregnancy. After visiting an abortion clinic to procure a hasty abortion, she thinks better of the idea and falls back on Plan B. She decides to have the baby and place it with a family through private adoption. She finds the perfect couple in the local penny saver right next to exotic pet adoptions. These are Vanessa, Jennifer, Grant, and Mark Jason Bateman. All this legwork comes before reporting her situation and solution at the urging of best friend Leah Olivia Thabi to her parents. That scene is a perfect example of how Cody defies expectations. Juno's gruff yet kind dad, J.K. Simmons, takes the news with equanimity, even saying of the father-to-be, "I didn't think he had it in him." Stepmom Brent Allison Janney had rather hoped the bad news with B that was into drugs or expelled, but goes to work to support her stepdaughter with a program of prenatal vitamins. The thing about Juno is that she is much older than her years and must see to everyone, especially her baby's new parents. She develops a rapport with Mark through music. He turns out to be a composer of commercial jingles and horror flicks. You have the best taste in slasher movies. She enthuses, but all is not right in the couple's relationship. This makes her despair not only for her baby, but for herself in the future. Do all relationships her mother essentially abandoned her fizzle and die? She takes another look at Polly, the boy she left behind, who has come to love her. The dialogue, especially coming from the teens, has a hip eloquence, coining phrases and juxtaposing arresting those sometimes corny images that startle the ear. Juno's fetus is described as a C. Monkey, she doesn't just need to piss, but to pee like Seabiscuit, she declares. Everyone at school sees her teen pregnancy as a cautionary wail. This may sound rather coy, but Cody's dialogue has a definite rhythm, and Mann directs his actors to deliver the words in the rapid fire precision of a 30 screwball comedy. Indeed, all scenes develop a rhythm and inner logic that bring the movie to often startling revelations and insights. Page never succumbs to the cuteness such a sassy character might encourage. There is a straightforward honesty and rigorous intellectual curiosity about Juno McGuff. She may use a cell phone shaped like a hamburger and argue the merits of various popular musical movements, but she is a vulnerable teen underneath all that maturity. F-boy and Cera are refreshing in their roles as kids with smarts. When Juno tells Polly he can be cool without really trying, he admits in one of the movie's best lines that he actually tries very hard. The Canadian production presents a slightly idealized, maybe a bit stylized suburbia, in which this odd yet endearing triumph of comic smartness can take place. It's a funny thing about maturity levels. Maturity and immaturity can be combined in unexpected ways, like a hulking teenager with a baby face at a certain age. Youthful hubris, naivete, and sheer foolishness can coexist with keen insight, practical realism, and steely tout. Common sense, equally juvenile narcissism and unreadiness for the demands of adulthood can survive well into middle age, and beyond a childlike spirit can be winsome or wearisome at any age, and some seem born readier for real life than others, alas, ever become with her blue slushies and layered grunge couture Juno. Ellen Page is definitely a kid, and she's mature enough to know it. She also thinks of herself as knowing and worldly wise, always ready with a cutting quip or witty aside, yet she's naive enough to be unconvinced of her condition after 2 pregnancy tests and a single encounter with Polly. Bleer Michael Cera, who is not exactly her boyfriend, and so we are back to the immaturity thing. It started with a chair, Juno tells us in the first decided, reading a note from Bleer, that someday she would have sex with him. That must have been some note, too. Pregnancy tests later there. She is in the convenience store, staring at the 3rd positive test, shaking it as if hoping for a different result. That ain't no E.T. a sketch. That's one doodle that can't be undid. Home Skillet observes the smugly appropriate clerk in a zinger typical of first-time screenwriter Diablo Cody's immoderately quotable sensibility. Without any real decision, Juno makes what is probably the only choice readily available to a girl with her socialization and background. She schedules an appointment to procure a hasty abortion. The same course of action is taken for granted by a friend who, in a show of support, offers to make the call for Juno, having done the same for another classmate. But a funny thing happens on the way to the clinic, and at this point the film, which had been merely abrasively crude and excessively witty, becomes intriguing. Standing in the yacht parking lot is a lone abortion protester, an ultra-shy, soft-spoken girl named Suchin Valerie Tian, whom in a disarming twist Juno knows from school all babies want to get born Suchin. Timidly chants as Juno approaches. The girls make brief, awkward small talk about school. But then, as Juno turns to head into the clinic, Suchin ventures to call after her with some salient pro-life facts. Your baby probably has a beating heart. It can feel pain and it has fingernails. It's that last detail that hooks Juno's imagination. Really fingernails, she briefly considers this. Then heads into the clinic, but Juno, who has earlier mentioned her proneness to involuntary, intrusive thoughts in connection with other unseen bodily members now finds that she is unable to stop thinking about. Fingernails, combined with the off-putting seediness of the clinic, it's too much for her, and soon she's running. Out the door, much to the approval of Sachin, not to mention as Sachin calls after her god, although the shy awkward. Sachin is far from the most compelling face for the pro-life movement. The film reinforces rather than undermines her. Basic stance and her pleas regarding the fetus's humanity play a key role in persuading Juno not to go through with the abortion in this cinematic year of the unborn child. Juno is perhaps the most striking and significant in its pro-life implications. Her consciousness expanded. Juno is now able to contemplate the possibility of giving up her baby for adoption, and she sets out to find the perfect couple to raise her baby. She finds her candidates of choice in affluent, childless Mark and Vanessa, luring Jason Bateman and Jennifer Garner. At this point, there are certain scenes and developments we can see coming. Juno has to tell her father and stepmother, Jade's Kane Simmons and Allison Janney, about the pregnancy. We'll see her in school at the mall and about town with her slowly swelling belly. Chances are she'll break up with Bleecker and make up with him by the end. Though they may or may not be dating yet here again, the film takes another unexpected step forward, and where it had been clever and insightful now reveals hidden layers of complexity and depth. A bit prim and subtly needy, Vanessa is a little taken aback by Juno's casual flippancy, and it seems possible that Vanessa's stuffiness could somehow queer the deal she wants so desperately, but Mark is more relaxed and personable. And if there are hints that he may not entirely share his wife's eagerness for a child, he seems at least supportive, and his easy interaction with Juno smooths over any awkwardness between her and Vanessa. But then gradually, subtly, a very different picture begins to reveal itself. One individual's pedillos come into sharper focus, slowly betraying significant character issues, while another character's foibles recede in importance. And Juno, who at this point isn't speaking to Bleer, is blindsided by painful truths about maturity and commitment, and the gaping chasm between the way things ought to be and the way they are. Juno's blind spot, ironically, is a side effect of her own fundamentally sensible outlook, which in her inexperience and naivete, she makes the mistake of taking for granted even sage. Words of caution from a sensible grown-up fall on deaf ears. It's a lesson the young can only learn by experience. Ellen Page's performance is the key to Juno's journey, and she unerringly nuances her character's blee self-assuredness with just the right notes of uncertainty and innocence. Bateman and Garner do equally textured work as the very different spouses, while Simmons and especially Janney make Juno's father and stepmother more interesting than they might have been. Critic Peter Chataway rightly notes that Juno empathizes with all of its characters, which is not to say that its sympathies are equally with all of them, and certainly not that it approves of or excuses all their choices. But while imperfect decisions by imperfect people lead to imperfect outcomes, the film doesn't lose sight of the way things should be. I need to know that it's possible for two people to stay happy together forever, Juno says plaintively to her father in a key exchange. It's a difficult moment because Juno's father is divorced and remarried. His answer isn't all that profound, but Juno gets the message and is almost surprised to learn that Weiser isn't. Always Sadder here is a film of rare wisdom, one that knows that following your bliss is often another name for selfishness and immaturity, and the secret to lasting happiness is often a matter of taking what you have and deciding to make it work. Extra information, like so many comedies, Juno is not anxious to do anything too smart behind the camera director. Jason Mann proved in his last project, Thank You For Smoking, that he has great comic timing, a DEA hand at shepherding actors, and I think whatsoever for the camera, and those skills all come to bear in his sophomore effort, which aims a little lower than that satire and hits its target accordingly. Some of the compositions are a little too just so, including a final shot that really could have ended about halfway through. and the music choices are soullessly hip. This is at least partially Cody's fault. When you name-drop the Stooges in Sonic Youth, these things happen, and I am dumbfounded by a scene that suggests that Matt, the Hoople's wonderful but decidedly overplayed All the Young Dudes, is somehow a lost classic. But Mann is clearly not trying to be a supremely cunning directing with this project. He just wants to get it right. He succeeds along with the rest of the creative team. Juno has modest aspirations, and it fulfills them, and is probably the sweetest and most human film in the current landscape of Oso. Serious prestige events. I'm a little confused about precisely where we stand at this very moment in the Juno backlash cycle, but I predict the anti-backlash backlash will begin any moment now. If it hasn't already, the movie was warmly embraced at the Toronto International Film Festival. Okay? The director is the son of the rich and famous Canadian director of Stripes and Ghostbusters, and was greeted with predominantly positive reviews when it opened in December. Although some critics, me included, thought it got off to a grating start, Roger Ebert even named it his favorite movie of 2007. My 16-year-old niece says it's her favorite film ever. Then came the inevitable backlash after the movie was no longer a discovery. Why was this snarky teen comedy getting all this attention, even Oscar buzz? By the way, I've been doing occasional Google searches for Juno plus snark since before the movie opened in December, and the latest total is about 26,500 results arguments lit up all over the place at Sergio Leone and the infield fly rule. Dennis Celio chose it his worst film of the year. On rock critic Jim Durgatis' Chicago Sometimes blog, he accused the movie of glib insincerity, suggested it could be seen as anti-abortion and therefore anti-woman, despite its arch post-feminist veneer, and declared as an unapologetically old school feminist, the father of Ayum Tobe, teenage daughter, a reporter who regularly talks to actual teens as part of his beat, and a plain old moviegoer. I hated this movie. Why Juno is anti-rock, more Juno fallout, and even a little bit more Juno. My problem with some of the dialogue in Juno, particularly in those irritating first 20 minutes or so, isn't that the characters don't sound like real teenagers or drugstore clerks or parents. It's that the stylized, deliberately overwritten speech sounds like belabored sitcom writing to me, not clever or funny, but stiff and fussy, as if awaiting a laugh track to punch it up. Okay, I have some reservations about Juno. I don't buy, for example, that a girl as smart and beautiful as Juno wouldn't have more friends, or that the only two she would have would be a cheerleader and a guy on the school cross-country team whose members inexplicably don't wear jocks while running. And I wonder if she's really stupid enough to think her third over-the-counter pregnancy test in one day would require her to drink a whole gallon of Sunny D, in which case, as one of Derag Goddess's commenters pointed out, a mild desire to urinate would be the least of your problems. A bottle of water, 2 cups of naturally diuretic coffee, a spot of herbal tea if caffeine is not your thing. Turns out Juno is not such an idiot, and Juno is not Citizen Ruth, too, a scab satirical socio-political comedy. It's a more conventional, sentimental, romantic comedy about a high school girl in trouble. For the most part, the tone of the movie is comedic and jolly, but there is a moment when Juno tells her father about her conditioned pregnancy, and he shakes his head in disappointment and says, "I thought you were the kind of girl who knew when to say when." Female viewers flinch when he says it, because his words lay be the bitterly unfair truth of sexuality. Female desire can bring with it a form of punishment no man can begin to imagine, and so it is one appetite women and girls must always regard with caution, because Juno let her guard down and had a single sexual experience with Thar. A sweet, well-intentioned boy, she alone is left with this ordeal of sorrow and public shame. Yes, there's some truth there, and the movie is not unaware of it, but I also think it's a misreading of the scene she mentions and the movie as a whole when Max says that line about the kind of girl who knew when to say when not, until near the end of the scene he's saying not so much what he really thinks both he and Juno's stepmother, Bren Jenny, are in shock as they later discuss when they're alone as something he feels he is obligated to say as a parent. Because, well, isn't that the kind of thing a father is supposed to say? It feels like an afterthought. Oh, I should probably express my obligatory authority figure scolding here before I forget, lest anyone think I am implicitly condoning reckless sexual behavior. Juno is expecting the adults to go through the roof with anger and outrage, but instead they take the news with sympathy. Unexpected humor and equanimity, the whole tone of the scene deliberately plays against expectations, Juno's as much as the audience's, and her reply, "I don't really know what kind of girl I am," is the first time we see her lower her AR guard. In that moment, she exhibits a potential for wisdom, and with it, maybe even some form of human-like ability that we hadn't seen before, and that puts her father's hollow words to shame for me. This was the first glimmer of hope that this Juno character might have the potential to become somebody worth watching for another hour or so. Flanagan also doesn't seem to give the movie credit for not portraying Juno as a helpless victim, and Juno doesn't accept that role for herself either. Besides, nobody ever taunts or isolates her because she's showing, even at school, which she continues to attend, she isn't faced with public shame, nor does she acknowledge any one of the things Juno gets absolutely right, is that teenage girls, even more so than 20 or 30 years ago, are more sexually advanced and in many cases more sexually aggressive than teenage boys. I'm speaking of biology. Here, not necessarily experience in the movie. The strong implication is that both Juno and her best friend Polly Blear Cera are virgins when they have sex. That one time at the end of the scene mentioned above, Mac shakes his head and jokes that he didn't think Polly had it in him. Bren immediately says you don't think it was his idea. Juno says the same thing to Polly. Something like, "At least it wasn't your idea," as a mild slap in the face before riding off on her bike, leaving him standing in front of his parents' house, teary-eyed, bewildered, and afraid, asking, whose idea was it? Strangely, and more than a little disconcertingly, Juno avoids the question of birth control almost entirely. All we know is that the idea of boysenberry-flavored, SL-scented condoms, or at least too much personal information about them shared by a women's clinic volunteer, seems to gross out Juno. She claims the sex with Polly was premeditated on her part, at least, since Spanish class last year, and you definitely get the impression that Polly finished real fast before either of them anticipated it. Maybe one or the other thought pulling out was sufficient. But Juno ventures no further into prophylactic territory. Juno has the full support of her family, her cheerleader friend, the baby's potential adoptive parents, and Polly, if she'd allow him more of a role in her life. This is another of the movie's more perceptive observations, and one it shares with Knocked Up in the United States today. Unplanned pregnancy is no longer considered a woman's problem, but how to handle it is absolutely a woman's decision. Men do not have an equal say in the matter because men don't get pregnant, and women have the moral and ethical right to choose what to do with their own bodies. Men who share the responsibility but not the same biological consequences are expected to stand by whatever decision the woman makes without asserting undue pressure or influence. This film, directed by Jason Reitman, written by Diablo, Cody, produced by Lianne, Halfon, John Malkovich, Mason Novick, Russell Smith, starring Elliot Page, Michael, Cera, Jennifer Garner, Jason Bateman, Allison Janney, J.K. Simmons, cinematography, Eric Steelberg, edited by Dana E. Globerman, music by Motto MSA Production Companies, Mandate Pictures, Missed It. Mud, distributed by Fox Searchlight Pictures, release date September 1st. 2007 in Torride, December 5th, 2007 in United States, running time 96 minutes. Country United States, language English, budget $6.5 to $7.5 million, box office $232.3 million. So guys, this is the review of Juno movie and some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting, and if you like this video, please like it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.